There you go.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, we're good to go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Manhattan Community Board 3's Transportation, Public Safety, Environment, and Economic Development Committee meeting, joint item on Wednesday, October 13, 2021. I am the chair for the Transportation Committee, Paul Ringel. Anisha Stephen is the Economic Development Chair. This is a joint committee item. I am going to go ahead and take attendance for transportation, and then Anisha, however you do attendance, I'll shift it over to you. So give me 1 second to pull up my sheet. All right, and I'm gonna start. Paul Rangel here. If they let me enable editing, there we go. Paul Rangel's here. Michelle Cooper-Smith.
Present.
Wendy Lee is absent. Lee Berman.
I'm here.
Thank you, Lee. David Crane.
Here.
Tariq Ramos. Okay. Anisha, it's all yours.
Okay, so Anisha Stephen here, Megan Joy,
Here,
Alistair Economakis,
he's absent.
Andrea is also absent, Herman Hewitt,
Present.
David Louie,
Here.
Richard Robiak,
Present.
Rodney Washington,
Yeah.
and Andrew Comey.
Here.
Great, thank you.
Okay, for attendance purposes, if everyone who is not a committee member from either committee can please sign into the chat for our attendance purposes for both committees. I got a screwed up attendance sheet. Kenyo Hernandez, you're not on my attendance sheet for some reason. I just want to make sure you're present.
I'm here. I'm present.
Okay, got you. It wasn't on my sheet for some reason.
Thank
All
you.
right. No, got you. Okay, so if everyone can just please sign in and your affiliation, and we'll go from there. And if anybody wants to speak to this specific item. Okay, so this item is in reference to Lower East Side partnership bid to talk about a presentation about garbage and expanding services in the area. So I believe Tim is on, right? Tim, did I see you?
Hi, I'm here.
Hey, Tim. And who else is anybody else presenting?
No, I was just gonna present a PowerPoint if I can share that.
Marissa from Sanitation is here.
Okay, great. Let me see if I can. I'll set you up with the share screen. You should be able to share screen. Tim.
Great, let me try that. Give me 1 second here. Go. Let me just move this and hit. Can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, I'm just gonna try to keep my video here. So thank you, Paul, Anisha, members of the committee, for inviting us to come and just discuss a little bit about our services and have a discussion about options for expansion. I just thought that I would start the presentation by giving a brief overview about bids in general, and then focus that to the Lower East Side partnership specifically. So there are 76 business improvement districts throughout Manhattan. As you can see in the map, the majority are concentrated in Manhattan and Brooklyn, with approximately equal amounts in Brooklyn and Queens, and a growing number in Staten Island. That number wasn't 4 a while back, and so we're very happy to have some new partners representing each corner of that borough. 38 of those 76 business improvement districts, including the Lower East Side, are in areas that are defined by the federal government as low to moderate income neighborhoods, meaning that services provided there have a range of functions, both from the bid perspective and from the city service perspective. Local laws form bids The law that authorizes the city or any municipality in New York State to form a business improvement district is at the state level. And then there's a local authorizing law for each business improvement district and an operating contract that they receive through the Department of Small Business Services. There are a variety of jurisdictional and operational partnerships that each of those bids have with a variety of agencies, again, informed by their district plan and their contract. So a question that gets asked often and maybe doesn't have the most articulate answer at all times is, what authority does a bid have? Again, bids are governed by individualized district plans, which are approved as local laws. And so the district plans specify boundaries, services, and methods of assessment depending on the type and use of properties within those boundaries. Those plans form the foundation for operating contracts that are renewed on a regular recurring schedule over multiple years with the Department of Small Business Services. And they provide for the unique and specific authority for that not-for-profit organization to act on the city's behalf to provide supplemental and other services above and beyond what is customarily provided by the city itself. How are bids governed? So each bid has a board of directors, and by law, they must be composed of a majority of property owners within the authorized geographical boundary area. Each board of directors also includes representatives of the mayor, the comptroller, the borough president for the borough the bid is located in, and the council member and/or speaker of the city council. In our case, we do have our bid within one council district. So Council Member Chin is our current representative. If there is more than one council member representing the geographic boundary of a bid, the speaker of the city council is considered the council's representative. Bids also have representation from the local community board. In this case, Alicia Lewis Coleman is chair, and typically have representatives of both merchants and residents within the community. How is a bid funded? So bids are predominantly funded through an assessment on properties within that geographical area. As I mentioned previously, a district plan lays out services, but it also lays out means and method of assessment for properties within that area based on their use and type. Each bid has a legislatively authorized funding formula, which dictates the amount of assessment a property owner will pay. Each bid assesses differently. There's a variety of different formulas, whether you look at assessed value, whether you look at linear feet and street frontage. There's a variety of ways that bids throughout the city assess properties, but that is all spelled out very specifically and authorized by the city council through the district plan and the local law that approves it. Typically, the amounts paid for a bid assessment are part of semi-annual tax bills issued by the Department of Finance. And so if you go and look up a bid property owner's taxes, all of those records are public. You'll see their property tax assessment, and then you'll see a bid assessment line on each of those bills. Some bids, and again, this depends on the bid that you're talking about, have additional sources of revenue, and those range from special contracts with individual agencies or entities to grants or support from federal, state, and city sources, and in many cases, concession and or programming revenues that provide support for operations. So getting into the specifics about the partnership, as mentioned before, each bid has a majority of property owners on their board of directors. In our case, we have 11 property owners listed here on this slide. We have 3 commercial tenants, 2 residents, and 4 government officials. So we have 4, 5, 6, so 9 commercial tenants, 11 property owners, and we do have 3 Class E community stakeholders. Again, these are non-voting members of the community board, but formal members of the board of directors. They include the community board 3, captain of local precinct, Louis Barcia, and then Don West, who is the president of the 7th Precinct Community Council. Just talking a little bit about the services that we specifically provide. So supplemental sanitation is probably the big one. This is removing litter, graffiti, stickers, bills, and general street sweeping and cleaning of our streets and sidewalks. We also manage public spaces throughout the district, and I'll show you a map in a minute, and maintain those spaces. Really, that's kind of the streets and the sidewalks and the parks and all the public plaza spaces where we are looking at furniture, cleaning, and landscaping. And going to the next slide, another large function that we do is promotions and programming. And so this is whether it be event-based or community project-based or public art-based. We have a team internally who works to produce and support small merchants throughout the community and really drive interest in our organizations, our museums, and making the Lower East Side a destination for shopping and tourism. And then finally, we have a suite of economic and community development functions. The big one here is our support for the Essex Street Market and the Essex Street Market Vendor Association. We manage all the community-based programming that is free to residents at the Essex Street Market. And specifically, those funds and that work is targeted towards low and moderate income residents to promote access to fresh fruits and vegetables and to provide opportunities for them to get low cost, high quality produce and food goods. Giving an idea of just kind of where our budget is. So on an expense side, the current fiscal year's budget is approximately 1.85 million. The majority of that, and I apologize, those slides are, the titles there are just need to be flapped, but the majority of our money, about 73%, comes from property assessments. The next biggest chunk of dollars comes from special contracts related to that low and moderate income programming at Essex Market. We get a smaller amount in grants, and there is a de minimis amount for interest and miscellaneous income. On the expense side, you'll see that supplemental services, this is really kind of our cleaning, our beautification, our landscaping, all the things where we're operationally functioning in the community comprise about 44% of our budget. That is followed by economic and community development. So that is not only special contracts and operations related to Essex Market, but also our public art program, then followed by promotions and programming. So events, digital assets, all the things that we do to support kind of economic development and the promotional side of the small business community. And that's followed by general administrative operations, approximately 11.5% of that budget. This map, and I know it may be hard to see, and I'll try to blow it up just a little bit, kind of defines what our service area is. So if we're looking at the map, these areas that are in light gray are properties that are included within the current business improvement district. This black line is the area in which we provide services. So you'll see that there are some properties currently not in the formal district that are getting services as a result of other sources of revenue. Mainly that is thanks to the support of Councilmember Chin and her annual discretionary award so that we can provide additional cleaning services outside of the defined geographic area that is articulated in our district plan. You'll see some areas here that are maroon. Those are areas that we hope to, in a more robust way, maintain in the future. They include the Delancey medians and the reconstruction of Delancey Street that will be forthcoming, as well as the Allen Street malls, which we all know were reconstructed partially, could use some more reconstruction, and frankly, could use a lot more love than they have today. The orange box up top is what is defined by the mayor's office and the mayor's office of nightlife as the nightlife mitigation area. This area was defined pre-pandemic to provide additional services and to better coordinate the services of the bid in the city in mitigating the impacts of robust nighttime economic activity. You'll notice that there is a substantial amount of properties that are outside of the bid's formal boundaries on the Ludlow corridor. The council member generously funds cleaning services. So right now, essentially, we are getting the same service level within the bid and outside of the bid in that area. But this gives you a good picture of all the places that we work and all the places that we maintain. You'll see down in and around this area, although outside of kind of that general service area, we do have relationships with both Strauss Plaza and the small public plaza on Division and Canal to maintain those also through grant funding. We were asked to come and discuss, and I'll just back out this slide a little bit so we can see it a little better, potentially what additional services the bid could provide if we expanded our service delivery. and potentially expanded our boundaries. And so those really relate to three buckets. The first is mechanized equipment. So discussing the possibility of the introduction of mechanized means and methods to aid cleaning operation, enhance our recovery time, and improve overall outcomes. We've seen the utilization of small format street sweepers in other bids outside of the city, and particularly other bids, our partners to the north in Canada and in Europe have deployed these with great success, just because they have narrow streets, narrow public spaces, and these smaller format machines are much more able to kind of articulate back and forth and get into the nooks and crannies of bike lanes and public spaces. The second is looking at a more coordinated approach to commercial trash collection. Right now, one of the challenges that we have, especially as it relates to restaurants and open streets, is the fact that there is a variety of different trash haulers. So each establishment, a commercial establishment, has a contract that they negotiate with an independent trash hauler, because the Department of Sanitation only picks up residential refuse. They do not pick up commercial refuse. And so what we unfortunately have is a collection of businesses that are all working with different contractors and all working at different times of day. And that has been a challenge, as we've seen in just looking at the street conditions. It is oftentimes hard to recover very quickly because of that, and the fact that, you know, trash bags spill, things happen when you got a bunch of different contractors in the field doing different things. And so one of the things that we could entertain would be unifying that commercial trash hauling through a single provider, using the district plan and assessment to charge all, for example, licensed establishments that have a liquor license who are having restaurant operations, to say your assessment is now going to cover your trash and refuse pickup. We're going to have you put it out on this time of this day. We're going to coordinate that activity with our supplemental services provider so that we're picking up trash and we're cleaning the street all at once. And then the last one is really enhancing cleaning operations. And this is utilizing a truck and power washing, both hot and cold, on a more regular basis in a more robust way. So currently we have, semi-annual spot cleaning, where we come in and we do kind of a blitz of the district, or at times we'll come in and do a one-off where we have a situation. Should we expand services and should we expand potentially the boundary where services are provided, we could include that to have as a more regular service. I think everyone talks a lot about, Midtown is clean and, all these things happen. I think it's important to remind everybody that Midtown is, or was pre-pandemic, very busy during the day. And so you had a lot of robust activity, and then at night you cleaned everything up. Whereas on the Lower East Side, we all know that while we are busy during the day, the predominant economic activity happens at night. And so we really have the reverse condition. And so we're really trying to figure out ways that we potentially could support mitigating the impacts from that robust activity with expanded services to allow us to more quickly recover between 5 a.m. and 9 a.m. because that 4-hour window, especially on a busy Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, is where we have to recover. And that was just a brief summary presentation. I hope that helped provide some clarity to the questions asked for this meeting, but we'd be happy to answer any questions or review any slides specifically that you may have.
Tim, thank you for that presentation.
Paul, would you like me to stop sharing so you can all see each other again, or I'm happy to do that? Tell me.
Sure, why not? Go ahead, Anisha, you already have your hand up. Go ahead.
Well, I have a question relating to a map, so you might have to pull it up again. But what is the, so you showed the existing boundaries of the bid area. What is it, what would an expansion include, I guess? Is it just that the assessment would change? That would be able to.
Sorry, let me go back to that map. Apologies. Give me 1 second here. There we go. And I apologize that this is a weird format here. So let me try to get this guy here. So let's just do north of Delancey and then we can talk south of Delancey. So this black line is the existing service area that we have. That service area is supported through assessments coming from these gray properties and all the work that's in and around those. And then the red properties are supported by grant funds. I think one of the challenges and one of the considerations that we have is $98 billion city budgets are great. They provide a lot of services and they provide a lot of resources at a local level. And so we've been fortunate through initiative funding annually in the city council to be able to provide services. I think we're recognizing that as federal dollars, especially the relief money that we just received, is spent, moving forward, the city may have to, in some ways, contract spending and services. And so those grant funds and that discretionary allocation might not be available. So with respect to north of Delancey, an expansion likely would include all properties here in red. And so that really kind of brings in the entirety of the Ludlow corridor and brings in the entirety of the Essex corridor. Some of those properties to the south, close to Delancey, are included. The properties to the north were not in the original drawing of the district boundaries. And so that would be the area. We're also looking potentially at including areas along Delancey Street, especially with its reconstruction, that are not included currently in the bid. South of Delancey, you'll see that there's just a small collection of properties, again, on the Ludlow corridor that were not included in the early 90s, as well as a collection of properties near Canal Street that are essentially, you know, if we go to this gray area and then we go across the street, this area here is the Chinatown bid. And so these properties are just in this weird kind of no bid land right between two bids. And then finally, looking at including other sites that are part of the Seward Park Urban Renewal Area extension that were not originally included within the bid boundaries. And so just including those within that specific area as well. Did that answer the potential areas for expansion, Anisha?
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you.
All right. I'm not going to ask anything right now, so I'm going to pivot to both committees. Just raise your hands in order, and it's only for committee members to ask questions of Tim, and I will recognize your Zoom hand, and I will call on you. Richard, I see your real hand up, so I'm going to go to you right now. Go ahead.
Sorry, had to unmute. Tim, with all of the issues that the board has had to deal with in your area, that area, what about the expansion and taking over the whole mitigation area? Would that, what do you think the potential is there for helping for the community board to be getting some relief from all of the issues that we've dealt with?
I think
the bid took that over.
Yeah. So look, I think it's a fair question. So essentially, right now, what we have is authority to clean one section of that area, right? If we kind of juggle this down here, you'll see, you know, the orchard core is clearly within the bid. Without discretionary support or alternative funding, we can't clean the Ludlow corridor. And so I think part of the challenge is that we don't have the overall jurisdiction from a boundary perspective to be able to assess all of these properties that are contributing to the concerns that the community board and frankly, the residential community has rightly expressed. You know, at the end of the day, it is hard for us to remove liquor licenses that currently exist. It will be hard for us to kind of go in here and pick and choose what happens. We have employed a variety of different strategies to mitigate as much as we can within the constraints that we have. We have partnerships with PD. We have partnerships with the Office of Nightlife. We have partnerships with DSNY and the mayor's office. I think that recognizing that we do have a robust nightlife and providing through a local law a suite of services that mitigate its impacts, and frankly, providing a mechanism to charge landlords and commercial tenants who have licensed establishments that are inadvertently, in many cases, causing impacts for residential quality of life, to have a defined plan where they pay to provide services that mitigate those impacts, right? Property taxes go back to a general fund and need to be allocated through an agency to a service area, whether that's a sanitation district, whether it's a community board. It's broken up in a variety of different ways. The only governmental mechanism available to a community to essentially tax these individuals in this defined area and provide that money to give services is a business improvement district. And so the thought process here is if that plan can more appropriately not only expand and articulate the specific services provided, but charge those establishments that are inadvertently causing some of those quality of life challenges, making them essentially pay for the impact, and then being a little creative as we talk about a more unified and coordinated commercial trash collection strategy. Those are big deals, right? They're not going to be a silver bullet.
Thank you. I don't think we're looking for a silver bullet, but I think at this point we are interested in anything that can improve, as you said, the quality of life for the residential folks down there. If you want to call it moral suasion, that's fine for the property owners and for the businesses. So if the bid was to expand its legal authority into that area, I guess we
Not
might.
going to change if it's crowd.
Oh no, that the board has an extremely difficult time dealing with liquor licenses in terms of trying to get them revoked. It's scarce as hen's teeth kind of thing. So I don't think I'm approaching the discussion with you from that point of view. It's, we understand that.
And apologies, Richard, I dropped out there for a second because of a bad internet connection. But I hear, I think what you're saying, and I think the goal really is focused on how can we provide better services, specifically as they relate to sanitation, cleanliness, and overall management outside of what would be the duties of others, including the SLA and then the NYPD.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is the order I saw the hands in. Susan, Kenyelle, then Michelle. So Susan first.
Thank you. Can you tell me, you have very irregular lines. This is about trash collection. So you have very irregular lines. So you're collecting trash, maybe across the street, sanitation is collecting trash. And in the middle of all this, you have the private carters collecting trash. Right now, that seems to even be more complicated with all the roadbed sheds because of the way trash is put out. It's impossible now to even tell whether it belongs to residential or commercial. So how do you all work together? How do you work with sanitation? How do you manage that collection? How does this work with the private carters? The idea of the bid actually kind of taking all that over and coordinating that, to me, sounds wonderful. How do you deal with all that?
Carefully, right? So look, let's just talk about who does what, right? So the Lower East Side Partnership bags and collects trash through street sweeping. And then we take, overflowing garbage cans and we bag that trash. You'll see it. It has a Lower East Side bag. The Department of Sanitation picks up those bags, specifically our bags, from corner posts. They also have separate routes that pick up residential trash. And as you're, said, it's kind of hard to distinguish between the two. And then you have a myriad of different types of carters. Now, the city has tried, and to the Department of Sanitation's credit, has tried to coordinate that activity, but it's a challenge. And so what we're thinking about is being a little bit more creative and using a different mechanism to say, well, if a commercial establishment wants to have their own carter, great, they can still do that and pay for that. But maybe why would they if through a bid assessment, they knew that that service was provided to them and that Essentially, it was at no cost, but it was part of their property tax bill or part of the pro rata share of the property tax bill that they paid their landlord. And if you can essentially unify an area geographically, as I mentioned, kind of the boundaries are all over the place. If you can square those out and say, in this area, if you're a commercial establishment, you're going to get assessed, and that assessment will include a charge for commercial trash collection 7 days a week. And then we're going to coordinate that trash collection. And then behind that, we're coordinating street cleaning, sidewalk cleaning, and sweeping services. It's a little easier. So it is certainly an innovative approach, but we were truly thinking about creative ways in which we can actually try to manage this situation, because we've tried a lot of things and we still need to do something else. And so really it comes down to, you got to square out the area, you got to tell everybody the rules of the road, and you got to say, you're certainly welcome to pay for additional services, but you're already paying for services that we can provide. And by doing that, we're unifying that approach in a way that is not possible in other neighborhoods or in other circumstances.
So do you have a continual ongoing working relationship with sanitation? And does sanitation have a special division that deals with bids?
Most bids have a relationship with their district. So we're, Sanitation District 3 in our case, and our operational team does have a direct line to our local on the ground team. And we have a direct line to DSNY HQ if needed. So, we have a very good relationship with sanitation. They work with us and we work with them. And, I just think we're frankly all realistic. Getting through the pandemic, I think that DSNY did as best they could with the resources that they had, and we were there along with other bids to help out with the resources that we had. We try to coordinate in the best way that we can. An example of where there's a challenge to coordination at times, Orchard Street, Ludlow Street, the nightlife mitigation area, DSNY provides street sweeping 6 days a week. But on Sundays, that street sweeping is not provided because there's only one sweeper that runs in Manhattan. And the cost to run that sweeper in our neighborhood for 2 hours is extremely high. And that's just the reality of it being a Sunday, and it being that we have one sweeper for all of the borough of Manhattan that day. And so thinking about creative ways to augment and supplement the services that the city is already providing is kind of what a bid does. But in our particular case, where Sunday may be a slow day in some neighborhoods, for us, it's a heavy trash and refuse day, just because after a Saturday night, that's tough. And frankly, it's tough for us to recover without that mechanized equipment and without that mechanized sweeping. And so we're thinking about ways that we can essentially internalize some of those functions, not only for that specific day, but for the other public spaces. But to do that, we need to expand our boundaries and be able to expand our budget to appropriately fund those services.
Thank you.
All right, Kenyelle and then Michelle.
Hi, my question is about the map, like the area. You showed south of the Delancey and north of the Delancey, but what about little areas that have become popular in the restaurant district, like Avenue B, 7th Street between A and 1st? I walked there the other day and I could barely get by from the garbage overflowing. How about those little areas?
I completely agree with you that there are a lot of challenges in the East Village. For us, our kind of boundary line on the north side is Houston Street. We've had several conversations, and the Department of Small Business Services had several conversations about expansion of bid services or bid type services. We actually piloted some of those over the pandemic. I think that's a conversation that needs to happen. And I think that, the start of that conversation has to be with, Councilmember Rivera and small merchants and property owners in the East Village, because, part of a bid is that you need to get those folks to buy in and support and work together. I think that we have always had a longstanding relationship below Houston, but we've really never had that relationship or set of relationships above Houston. But I agree with you completely that the conditions and the services are needed, and something that I would encourage the community board to consider as they move forward as well.
Okay, so we would have to get the like a group together to agree to this, to get those services for this side?
Yeah, so essentially, that is the long and short of it. There is a formal process. It's not analogous to a ULERP, but similar in timeframe. But yes, that would need to happen. And it's something that, we would certainly support from the Lower East Side perspective. I think we would defer to the council member, community board, and community organizations about how they wanted to proceed with an expansion of services from us directly above Houston Street.
How long would that take, more or less, if we can get that together?
So I think if you can derive the support and you can identify, merchants and property owners that would be willing to say, yes, we want to support this, probably 11 to 18 months is the typical timeline for something like that. The other piece of the puzzle is business improvement districts from a city planning perspective, because they do get reviewed by city planning, need to be contiguous. So you have to kind of find a pathway if you're expanding a bid so that it's all connected. So it's hard to say like, this kind of maybe 3 block faces and this 5 block faces and that 5 block faces, but they're not all connected, are a bid. You have to kind of define a geographic area and make sure it's connected. But something we would be more than willing to assist and explore if the community board desired.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
A point of information, north of Houston Street. I do have myself the certificate of incorporation for the initial starting of a bid over there. It was established the same time as the Orchard Street bid, if you want to call it that at the time. So I have in my hand the certificate of incorporation for that bid process in my office right now. It was started by Lower East Side Incorporated. The problem was there was not enough merchants that would attend those meetings on a daily basis. And as the neighborhood deteriorates, there was not sufficient merchants to continue the establishment of that. But I have the certificate of incorporation of that initial bid offering in my office at this moment.
Okay, thank you, Herman. And we can have that conversation at a different point. Let's get back onto this one. Thank you, Herman, though, for that. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thanks, Paul. So I just want to say that off the bat, I think that this is a great idea. I mean, I live very close to the current boundaries, and I see the street, the cleaning team out all the time. I see them in a way that I never see DSNY. I mean, so I think that this is great. And I'll just say I'm not only on transportation, but also the chair of the SLA committee. And one of the biggest complaints that we get is about trash, which unfortunately is not an issue that the SLA committee can deal with. And that's something that I think Richard was alluding to slightly as well. So I just want to say that I think that this is a good idea. I mean, it's sort of barbaric the way that we do trash in New York City. I walked around on Monday night just to see what was going on. It's, it's of course not just restaurants and whatever, it's also residential buildings. I walked down actually Ludlow Street just below Grand, and I think every building had just gigantic piles of trash out in front of the curb. And so Tim, I just wanted to ask, I mean, I know that, so this, because the bid has this plan developed and then certified by local law, if I'm understanding correctly, are there other, so this is a plan that could be individualized to the, unique needs of our district, which I know you've laid out those 3 options, the street sweepers and other options. There's a program that is in some sort of infancy that I'm curious about if you've considered, clean curbs, which would be metal containers. I believe that it's being run through bid applications. So I don't know if that's something that you've explored. Thanks.
Sure. So the clean curbs pilot is being run through a bid application in the sense that the bid provides the funding to install the units. I think it is something that we have looked at, that we would like to pilot. but have not done yet. If that's something that the community board would like to include as a service, we would definitely be open to that. And potentially we could fund it through a capital expenditure as part of the district plan. Excuse me.
So would it be helpful to include that in our resolution?
Yes, I think that it would be helpful for that to be articulated if that's something you'd like to see.
Okay, thanks.
Be right back.
Yeah, Tim, go get some water. Looked like he was choking. I hope he's all right. I guess I'll wait for Tim to come back. David, you have, is your question for Tim?
It's going to be, yeah.
I think there you go. I think you guys
All
are.
right,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, David.
Oh, I was just gonna ask if you could elaborate on how that program works. It is interesting, but I know almost nothing. If we're going to include it, I'd like to hear a little more about what it is.
Sure. So my understanding is there's a current pilot, and essentially the Clean Curbs program works with a bid to create a design for a piece of street furniture that would be placed in the curb to allow refuse and trash that's normally kind of piled outside to be enclosed, so that you could put the trash in the clean curb unit that is designed, and then the refuse hauler could come up to that unit and take it away, as opposed to the condition that we have now in many cases where those bags of trash are kind of just piled on the street, and you kind of get these like groupings of garbage bags. So instead of seeing that, you're seeing a more unified and perhaps coordinated system where those things are covered and are not on the street. Again, that is a pilot program. It is still in its infancy. And because it's a pilot, there's a lot of flexibility on how you could roll that out.
What kind of garbage gets put in there, and is it rat proof?
I think that those are, I think on the rat proof side, there'll probably be a design question. I don't have the specific there, but I believe that's something we would likely, if we piloted that, want to incorporate. And then the refuse that gets put in there, I believe can either be commercial and or residential.
Sorry, can I just hop in for 1 second?
I was going to ask to have you talk about it.
Sorry, Marissa Yanni, Manhattan Liaison from the Department of Sanitation. So yes, our Clean Curbs program is still in its pilot format. We're still accepting bid applications right now. Yes, the container would be rat proof. That is part of the specifications for when the bid purchases it, and it would be commercial waste inside.
Thanks, Marissa. Sorry, I added residential there, but.
Thank you. Susan, you still have your hand up, or is that what you?
Yeah, no, this is since everyone's brought up the Clean Curb program. Marissa, could you tell us, you said you're working with a few bids right now. The application's been open since January. I'm wondering how successful this is going to be. How many bids have applied that you're working with approximately? And why is this taking so long to get off the ground for a pilot?
So unfortunately, I do not have the number of bids. It has not officially started yet. So I can't say anything about a success rate because we haven't started. No one has put any furniture, any containerization on the street yet. My colleague was the one working on this. I apologize, I don't have that answer for you, Susan. Only thing I did receive was today what I emailed you was that we're still working with bids and applications are still open. I want to say it's because of COVID that we had a little bit of a snag as far as that application process, but it was open, correct, since January, so since the middle of the pandemic.
Okay, so I'm going to be just devil's advocate here. It might be a great program, but I don't see why we would at this point be advocating for something that is in pilot but hasn't started yet. So we have no idea how it's going to work, but someone else is going to be trying this. So we can let somebody else try it and see how it works before we start advocating for it. And it seems in speaking about the expansion of the bid and everything the bid is doing, this seems like almost, although it might be a good program, it seems almost irrelevant to the subject of the bid expansion and all the things bid is doing. Just my thought about a pilot. We love pilot programs, but I think it's really good to see how they work out before you start expanding the use.
Andrew has his hand up. Go ahead, Andrew.
I was just, before Susan added her comments on this, I was going to say the same thing. There's too much uncertainty with these for me to feel comfortable adding them to the resolution. Where are they going to go? Are they going to go in the street? Is that going to make it more difficult for the cleaning equipment? Are they going to be taking parking spots, as parking spots are becoming a rare commodity? I know there are people who disdain parking, but there are people who do need parking. So I would just say let's not add it to the resolution at this point.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Any other questions for Tim or for Marissa? So then I have a question. Tim, my question is, if we were to approve something tonight, what's the turnaround time? What do you think? What's the turnaround time looking like?
So I think that what we wanted to do was come and discuss with the community board things that they would like to see. I think if the community board were to pass a resolution that said, we want you to move forward with this process, we can attempt to start to do that quickly. There's a legislative timetable here for a bid expansion of services. So we would quickly garner support, go through all the paperwork pieces. There's a series of public meetings. There's a series of interagency consultations. That's probably about a 4 to 6 month window, even in the most accelerated form. We would put that together, and then we would have to do a city planning review and come back to the community board to authorize the specific changes to the plan. In its fastest form, we may be able to get something passed through the government for 2023. With the change in city administration and the legislative calendar, it might be some time. I'm just giving you what the standards are for what this is, and I wouldn't want to commit to saying something that the Department of Small Business Services wouldn't say if they were able to join the call. I know that the representative was ill tonight and unfortunately couldn't make it. But I think that it also is very helpful if the community board basically says that's not good enough. We would like to see these services sooner, and we would like you to and the city to move to implement this in a faster way. I think that push essentially is helpful. And I think if we have the commitment from the community board to say, we want you to do this, go figure out how to do it, do all these things, that we're willing, ready, and able to move as fast as city government is willing to move. And we all know that can not be the fastest at times.
Okay. Megan, I think you wanted to say something, right? You had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, although it's not hopeless, like we still have council member funding that supports cleaning that area right now. It's just that funding isn't permanent. So it's, 2023 does sound really far away, but we need to plan now for the future. Like the bars and restaurants aren't going away in a couple of years. So that's and it depends, like, when council member changes, are we always going to get those funds? That's why I think it's important to support the bid, because it's there's no other way of taking money directly from the people who are benefiting from the nightlife in that area. So the landlords and the business owners. There's another other mechanism of taking money directly from them and putting it directly back into our community to mitigate some of the problems that we're part of causing. I say we're as a bar owner.
And just on a time clarifier, Paul, just look, we're in fiscal 22, a new administration, new council sits in January, you know, and then we get to June 30th, and then we start fiscal 23. When I say 23, it would likely be that those first assessments would be, you know, through a legislative period where they could be charged and formally, you know, services expansion, you know, by that kind of December, January point. But, you know, really that's the time horizon that is likely, and we would try to accelerate that and push it as best we could if the community board wishes to do so.
I saw Richard put his actual hand up, and then Susan. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I'm missing the little thing on the screen that click on, whatever. Tim, have you scoped out if the community board goes through with this, and if the expanded area comes into existence, have you scoped out what the potential change to your budget would be?
We have not done the full analysis yet. We would have to do that analysis. I think we would need an indication of the community board's desire for, you know, specific services, whether or not, you know, the assessment formula was modified to specifically have a special class for, you know, licensed establishments that have nighttime operations. I would assume that the budget would increase really kind of as it relates to sanitation services. We're probably talking, you know, at minimum a few $100,000 to institute what would be that mechanized operation for street sweeping, and then certainly the trash collection piece. I don't have those full numbers yet. We would certainly be willing to explore and come back with some ballparks. But I think we were asked for the purposes of tonight's discussion to provide kind of an overview and hopefully get from the community board a general indication about where they wanted us and if they wanted us to go in a certain direction that we would explore and get more information about.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Richard. And Susan, go ahead. You have your hand.
Yeah. So I guess this is Megan or Tim. You wanted sanitation to come tonight to discuss their services in relation to this. So I'm wondering what that is while we have Marissa here, what it is that you wanted sanitation or what services you wanted them to talk about.
So just to be clear, my understanding was it was the committee that wanted to understand what sanitation's role was. I think we went over some of that, but I'm happy to have Marissa kind of explain what the customary services are that DSNY provides for the Lower East Side.
Would you like me to tell you? Sorry, I didn't know if that was a question.
No, yeah, that is a question. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so what we do in the Lower East Side is what we do in every other community district, providing collection service and street sweeping, collecting residential garbage, and also collecting from the litter baskets on the corners, as well as conducting street sweeping on the streets and, of course, snow removal when that comes time. So we're collecting from the garbage cans almost every day in the districts, a couple of times a day, but of course they still get overflowing. And as you know, alternate side parking is once a week. And as long as we see, as long as cars move, we'll be able to sweep the street. And of course, any additional cleaning that we have in partnership with the bid with Lower East Side Partnership is fantastic. Any additional help that we can get is always warranted and always needed. And we cherish these relationships with the bids and partnerships all over the city. It's incredibly helpful seeing bags of garbage let's say Lower East Side Partnership on it is fantastic. Being able to just throw that into the truck is amazing and helps us keep moving and going on to other corners that are not serviced by a bid and we can give a little more attention to because no one is there to help do that. Doing Adopt a Basket is fantastic as well. So I'm able to kind of monitor the corner baskets. If it starts to overflow, to tie it up and put a new liner in it, again, is super helpful. If there are any additional areas in the district that you think need more help, do let me know. If you think this means reaching out and speaking with any businesses on how they put out their garbage or residents, let me know as well. Let Susan know, and then I'm happy to go out and conduct outreach in the district as well, or work with the local superintendent and see what other services. I mean, our hands are somewhat tied because we have what we have for funding and for personnel. So we have the equipment, we just need more personnel. We do have a new class coming out that should be starting in November, I believe. And before the year is done, we'll have some new folks, some boots on the ground, but it's just a slow process to get more folks out there to provide these services.
I would just echo what Marissa said about that partnership. I think it's really important, and I think she makes a really good point that that partnership does permit the limited resources that we have as a community to at times be focused elsewhere where there's not a bid and there's not services and there's still a need, right? So, you know, the more we can expand the services and expand the folks who are paying for those services, not only does that better mitigate the problems that we're all continually facing, but it also frees up resources elsewhere in the community so that we can get a broader impact from those services that the city normally provides, right? And those services really are focused again on street sweeping and residential pickup and trash can pickup, but they are not in any way related to commercial refuse. And so there's a very fine line, right, about commercial and what a property owner's responsibility is. And that's where a bid can fill a gap. So instead of dealing with individual merchants and property owners, you have kind of an overarching entity that is taking responsibility for that, that can work more closely directly with DSNY and the DSNY districts where those bids are located.
I'm going to take the final two comments right now. I thought I saw Megan's hand up. And David, did you just try to put your hand up or no?
Marissa,
Go
can
ahead,
you talk a little bit? Marissa, can you talk a
Yeah, it
little bit
keeps going
about
back
how?
down.
Marissa, can you talk a little bit about how if outdoor or street seating has been a challenge for DSNY, and if you see any solutions towards that?
I think it definitely has been a challenge. It does get confusing. I will receive complaints about garbage sitting curbside and it's bundled, it looks ready to go. So I'm wondering, is it residential garbage just waiting for collection, which, you know, you put out 4 p.m. the day before. So it makes sense for it to be sitting there at 5 p.m. Or is it from a private, or is it commercial and we're waiting for the private carter to come and they put it out, let's say 3 days early, not to talk bad about your businesses. But you know, it's hard to tell sometimes which is which. And with these dining structures, the garbage is no longer directly in front of the business, normally, right, in front of these restaurants. So it does get a little challenging. I think one help, honestly, is the Clean Curbs program. It would put all the commercial waste in one location. Sorry, please excuse the ambulance. To put all the garbage, the commercial waste in one location, and it can be serviced by the private carter. And then that's it. Then the only thing on the street is the residential garbage, where we will then know that that's what it is, and we'll be able to collect it and kind of keep moving and move on. And the only other issue with the outdoor dining structures is probably when it comes to snow. We have been practicing every Sunday for the past few weeks, at least the whole month of October, with our snow preparation and snow training, and seeing how we can kind of turn the curves and go down the street with all the dining structures there, and trying not to have any accidents or anything like that. So it is a challenge, but we're doing everything we can to service the residents, to make sure that commercial businesses are putting their waste out when they're supposed to, and that those private carters can come get them as well, to make sure that they're available for them as well. And what ends up happening is people just put their garbage on the corners, and we end up having to take it with our corner basket trucks. So it's a little bit of a push and pull there.
All right, David Crane. Last question, David Crane.
Yes. So Tim, you've been talking about, I haven't got a strong sense of what you were talking about for commercial pickups. You know, you've talked about providing, you're wanting to provide a pickup service. What I'm thinking is that this curb program, the Clean Curb program, even though it's an information program, which isn't yet actually in pilot, does sound like it could be a good idea. If we were to ask you to consider it in this resolution, how might that affect your budget and schedule on this? And I guess, do you feel that it's complementary or a distraction? Thank you.
I think we need to get back to you with more information. I think, again, if it's something that you wanted us to explore, we would be happy to do that. I think we would also be happy to do that in the context of potentially a unified commercial trash hauler program to say, okay, let's just do the numbers here. Does it make sense to have multiple different providers and a clean curb program where all that stuff is in the same spot? Does it make sense to, say we're going to have the same provider and then have their truck running at this time every single day, and then we're having our team come behind them to make sure there's nothing there? We can get into those operational weeds and circle back with you and provide you kind of some options and some thinking around that. I don't have that information today, again, but if it's something you'd like us to explore, we would be happy to do so.
And follow up. I should have jotted this thought down. Had you considered incorporating this before tonight? Did you have thoughts on it before tonight?
So I think that we knew of the pilot. We thought it was an interesting pilot and an interesting potential solution. We saw it in a more limited way, especially kind of want to look at Orchard and Broome, perhaps maybe, in a limited area where that could work. I think it definitely is suited for multiple different haulers. It's just a lot easier to know where all that commercial trash is. Again, I think one of the points of the program is to say we can identify what's residential and what's picked up by DSNY, and then there's a space for stuff that's picked up by others. If you can modify the way that commercial trash is picked up, I am not sure if a bunch of clean curb units would have a complementary impact or a negative impact. I'd have to look at it a little bit more closely. But we knew of the program, but we have not applied to it as of yet.
Okay, I do want to kind of move things along. Laura, I'll take one question from the public. Laura Sewell, you can ask that question.
Thanks very much, Paul. It's just a really quick question, I think, for Ms. Yanni. It's just, how does it work when there's one location for the carters? We've been working with some of the restaurants on areas where there've been like especially bad rat issues around the garden. So I'm just we've been working actively on this, so I'm curious about it. And if they all have different carters now, how does it work if it comes from one location? Is that picked up by DSNY or by the commercial carters? And how do they know? Is it different days? If you're aware.
That's a really great question, because that would kind of be hysterical if like 4 different carters show up to pick up from the same place. It would not be us because it is still commercial waste. But I think this is where the commercial waste zone plan kind of comes into effect, where we're limiting how many carters are in an area, but that's still a little bit down the line. I think something that Tim mentioned makes a lot of sense. Again, this is in his operations ideas, but to have one carter kind of servicing each container or things like that. Obviously, you can't have 10 different businesses probably putting their garbage into this container, because that would probably just be a lot on a Saturday night. Excuse me. So unfortunately, I don't have that answer for you. But Tim, if you do have any other questions regarding this program, if this is something that you do want to explore more, do let me know. And I can definitely make sure I connect you with folks. I know you were somewhat thinking about it, but if you have any more specific, like this question, more specific questions, happy to assist you. So I'm sorry, Laura, I don't have the answer to that, but I'm really hoping it's not where multiple carters are coming for the same one bag of garbage.
No, no worries. It actually helps just get a picture for where it's at. Thanks very
Yeah.
much.
Okay, I'm not going to take any more questions. It is about 7:38. So let's move forward to the Transportation Committee. I sent a draft reso to the committee this afternoon. Anisha, I don't know if you sent anything out to your committee as well.
Yeah, economic development got it yesterday. Megan, do you want to pull up the draft?
Sure.
I think it's bid reso, if I'm correct.
Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Thank you, Marissa. Megan, do you want to maybe start by reading the resolution?
Sure. Whereas the need for additional services to improve neighborhood quality of life and mitigate issues caused by local economic activity is apparent in the Lower East Side. And whereas sanitation and refuse removal continues to be a challenge due to lack of coordination, varying service providers, and constraints on public funding to address documented conditions which remain unsatisfactory. And whereas commercial activity, particularly that related to bars and restaurants, contributes to conditions that impact neighborhood conditions and residential enjoyment of streets, sidewalk, and other public spaces. And whereas expanded sidewalk seating and roadbed seating has created additional food garbage without space for storage or adequate means of removal. And whereas there is a high likelihood that public resources required to increase services will continue to be constrained for the foreseeable future. And whereas those benefiting from such economic activity, which is causing secondary impacts, should contribute directly towards mitigation strategies. And whereas Community Board 3 has continually requested additional public services to mitigate such impacts. And whereas the Lower East Side Partnership has the ability as the area's local business improvement district to assess properties by use and provide supplemental services above those that are customarily provided by the City of New York. So therefore be it resolved, Community Board 3 requests that the Lower East Side Partnership, the Department of Small Business Services, and other relevant agencies develop plans to adequately improve and expand services to mitigate impacts associated with increased local economic activity. Further be it resolved that these plans should include a more comprehensive approach to street cleaning and commercial trash collection, which prevents concerning street and sidewalk conditions due to refuse removal and collection. Further be it resolved that properties containing commercial establishments holding liquor licenses appropriately contribute to assessments that provide such services to mitigate their commercial impacts. Further be it resolved that the Lower East Side Partnership, the Department of Small Business Services, other relevant agencies, and elected officials expeditiously work together to expand services which address the many issues related to the public realm and its cleanliness that Community Board 3 has continually raised.
Go ahead, David.
The last whereas should be, it should really be stated somehow that CB3 requests that these things expeditiously, et cetera. CB3 requests that instead of that at the very start there. Yep.
Andrew, you have your hand up?
Yes. Unless I missed it, there's nothing in here about supporting the expansion of the boundaries. And I thought that was the crux of this, such that the partnership could assess additional businesses to cover the cost of the expansion. I may have missed it in the reading.
Can we scroll back up? I don't know if I missed it too.
It's definitely not like
Okay.
explicitly clear.
So this is perhaps a question for Tim. Tim, is it helpful for it to be explicitly clear? Do you need a community board resolution to take forward to get support for the expansion of your boundaries?
I think that if you wanted to include an expansion of boundaries to the existing service area in language here, that would be appropriate. The only thing I would say is that we would have to come back to you should we proceed, because you'd have to pass a secondary resolution as part of the formal expansion process that would include defining boundaries. But here, this resolution is worded is basically asking us to go and figure this out and pushing the city to help us figure it out. But I don't think including language here about expanding those boundaries to the existing service area would be inappropriate. It would probably be helpful. So yeah, sure. I just preface we have to come back.
Right. So I'm not trying to add more work or complicate the resolution. So we can pass on it if you have to come back anyway. I wasn't clear that was the process. So I'm fine with just leaving this as it is.
That was going to be my point, is if we put somewhere in this resolution to expand the boundaries, the first question everyone's going to say are, well, what are the boundaries? And we're not going to have that exact answer until,
So
right? Okay.
No, so that's fine. So let's just leave it as is then. Thank you.
I agree.
So I think just to mention, like, you could say, if you wanted to expand the service delivery area, right, without specifying those boundaries, that's just an option too. I think that we would have to come back to you with specific boundaries to say, here's the area.
I still don't know how I feel about that. Oh, Michelle, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
I think Richard's hand was up first. Hand.
Oh, I can't. I don't.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Richard. Sorry.
I missed one meeting where apparently this was starting to get fleshed out. And to be candid, after listening to the discussion today, I think that this motion confuses people. It confuses me. What is it saying? Is it saying that Community Board is asking for the Lower East Side bid to expand its boundaries to cover all of Community Board 3, Chinatown, the Lower East Side, and the East Village? If that's what they're saying, this motion does not say that. This is, from my point of view, this was going to be a discussion of services, but it's missing the component of saying, well, the Lower East Side bid is going to be the be all and end all for these services to the extent that it can. And if that's the case, I think this is a very confusing motion, and I anticipate voting against it unless it can be clarified. For example, in the motion, why not specify something about the Lower East Side bid and where we are asking them to provide these services? We're not saying that. We're leaving that extremely vague, and I find that very unsettling.
Richard, the point that Tim just clarified is that this resolution is really about asking the bid and all of the relevant agencies that will need to be involved to start this process. And then they will come back to us, right, with the exact boundaries, services, assessment, all of those things, which we will then review and have to vote on. So this is like the precursor to all of those things.
Okay, but that, no, thank you, Anisha, but that doesn't answer my question. Are we looking at the bid to be the sole provider of these services for every single square foot of Community Board 3?
No, because the bid
Well,
can't.
then we're not saying that.
Oh, Michelle or David?
Yeah.
We're also not saying that we support expansion. I mean, we should be careful to not do that, actually. I mean, I'm gonna support expansion if it's reasonable. What essentially what Richard's held out here is like, if we're being vague about it, then, then exaggerated bid could be something that we have inadvertently supported, which I wouldn't support. Does that make sense? They have talked about expansion. We should definitely not imply that we support it in this without knowing what the boundary is. I
Michelle.
don't know the language in here which talks about the expansion. Can we highlight that? It may not be there.
Michelle and then Susan.
Okay, thanks. I'd like to make a motion to add a whereas clause and a therefore be it resolved clause about the Clean Curbs initiative. I just posted it in the chat if there's a second for that.
Well,
Second.
what's the motion?
I just put it in the chat, Richard.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, I heard a second.
Yeah, David.
Did I hear it for a second? Or-
Yeah, second.
So now we enter into debate
It's
all
up
about
for- it's up for debate.
the amendment, yeah.
Okay,
Can I start off by saying why I think it's important to include it?
sure.
Just to reiterate about we get so many complaints at SLA and in transportation as well about trash. And we're hearing problems about how commercial trash gets mixed in now because it's not in designated spaces. I understand that this Clean Curbs is a pilot program, but that's the point of so we don't know if it works or not, but that's sort of the point of a pilot program, is to see if it works. I would say that we are in sort of dire straits. The system is totally broken. Why would we wait? And first of all, this is not authorizing the program. This is just asking the bid to explore it, because it seems like the bid would be the only entity that would be able to do that. Tim might say that find that it's not reasonable to do or not necessary based on the other, services that he's proposing expanding. So I really think that there's no harm in including this, because it's potentially a really great program. And as I said, our trash system is broken right now for commercial trash. And why would we want to wait years to see if it works elsewhere before bringing it here? I mean, I'll just tell a story. I was walking home on the phone with a colleague who grew up and lived in Ann Arbor at the time. And I said, oh my God, I got a whiff of a stench walking across Hester Street. And he said, what's wrong? And I said, the trash. And he goes, what do you mean? And I sent him a picture of it. And he goes, that's barbaric. Like, the way we do trash in the city is barbaric. And I don't see why we would be opposed to exploring what could be a incredibly useful and not controversial in other places system. In Portugal, they put the trash under the ground and lift it out. And in Ann Arbor, they use those types of metal containers. I know David has explored it for his community garden because he's had trouble with it, but it's not possible. So I think it would be really great if we could at least explore the option. Thank you.
Sorry, I thought I was saying something. David, Susan, Andrew, my apologies.
Well, I didn't raise my hand. I support it.
Oh, your hand is still up. Okay, I'll take it down. Susan and then Andrew.
I didn't want to, my hand was up before Michelle made the motion. I didn't want to speak to that. I want to speak to something else.
Okay, I'll hold off on you. Andrew, you're speaking to the motion?
No, I'm speaking to the issue Richard raised, which seems to have gotten us all a little convoluted now. So
It's
Okay,
kind of,
well, we now have this.
I'm fine. I'm fine with the exploration of the clean curbs program being added. So
Thank you. So this is the motions on the table for this whereas and resolve clause, correct? So whereas and a resolve clause? Yeah. So let me just read it. Whereas DSNY is soliciting applications from bids across the city for the Clean Curb pilot program, and I guess down the line, further be resolved, the LES partnership should explore working with DSNY to bring Clean Curbs pilot program to its territory as a trash mitigation tactic. David, is your hand now up for this?
Yeah, I just will make a couple small amendments to the amendment.
ahead.
First of all, position of it. I would like to put the whereas, I believe after the whereas commercial activity. Or possibly after the next one, either before or after the one in light blue. That's, if when we vote on this, that's where I would like it to go. I think we should stick the word pilot program, probably that whereas should have a phrase in there about commercial garbage collection to facilitate containerized commercial garbage collection. Is that a phrase that will make sense? So I would say put that after the word Clean Curbs pilot program.
I would say garbage storage.
Garbage storage, okay, that makes sense. To facilitate containerized garbage storage. And then it's in, by the way, it's in the whereas that's floating off in the chat. And then the further.
I'm editing it. I've got it, David. I'm editing it. So.
Okay, thanks. And the further be it resolved. I don't know where it goes because there were a number of further be it resolved about the scope of program or something, and it should go among those. Certainly not the last one, and probably not the first. But I don't see them. If you could scroll maybe the Word document.
I'm thinking right before the last for further be resolved.
Sounds great.
So the further be it resolved clause should go in between 3 and 4, or the last one, and right before the last one. There you go.
Are we voting on this, or are we just?
Well, I just want to see how it looks like in there. Can
Okay.
we just see what it looks like in
Sure.
the document, and then we can vote. And there's a new whereas, right, Michelle? You just put in.
Yeah, she dropped it in the chat. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so just so we can see what it looks like, whereas DSNY is soliciting applications from bids across the city for the Clean Curbs pilot program to facilitate containerized commercial garbage storage. And okay, so I'm just gonna have, I know we have other questions, but I'm just gonna put everybody's hands down. For these two additions, the whereas and the further be it resolved clause, if you're in favor of that, please raise your Zoom hand. If you can't raise your Zoom hand, please let me know. One, two, three, four, five. This is for both committees. Where's mine? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Anybody else raising their hand? 7 is Megan.
I'm
You're
raising
Herman.
I'm raising
Okay.
my hand because I do not have that little thingy.
It's fine. 1, 2, 3. Right. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 10 hands. I think that's the majority on this one. So those stay in.
Thank you, Herman. I thought I was the only one who didn't have that little thingy.
You always just give me high fives next time. It's all right. Don't worry about it. Okay, yeah, everybody can put their hands down. I appreciate that. So those stay in. All right, now there's go back to, let me put my own hand down. Michelle, is your hand still up from the vote, or did you want to add something else?
Yeah, I have another amendment, but come back to me.
Okay. I know Susan wanted to say something, and then Andrew.
Yeah, so this was speaking, I guess, to what Richard brought up. What I think is happening is because we've had a lot of discussions of expanding the bid geographically in the past, I think that is getting mixed up in this. And what this is saying to me is that we want them to look at adding more services. And I think it does say that. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it's this resolution to me seems that we're asking the bid to figure out how to give us more services and come back to us with a plan. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Susan.
And just one more thing, in the very last whereas at the bottom, this is a very stupid little thing, but if we could just change the which to a that. I think it's at the very bottom.
The
Last whereas or last result?
Second last line, expand services that. Thank you. Sorry, couldn't help it.
Okay, no, it's all right. Thank you. Andrew, right? You wanted to say something else, correct?
Yeah, to Richard's point. So to Richard's point, why don't we just put in the resolution then, and to Susan's, if Susan's saying this is simply about expanding services, why don't we just say expanding services within the current geographic area, and then let the bid come back to us for a separate request to expand their geographic area. So it's crystal clear, the services that they're going to expand are within their current service area. So there's no gray area or no risk that people perceive this as an expansion of the geographic area.
I would agree with Andrew's point.
I don't know where you stick that on. Unfortunately, I can't pull the rest.
I wouldn't want to restrict them to that.
Wouldn't want to what?
I wouldn't want to restrict it to that. We're not telling them to expand, but I wouldn't want to restrict them from considering expansion.
Hello, they are concretely have proposed to operate outside of their very restricted area, but it's inside of the nightlife mitigation zone, whatever they call that. It's everything to the west of Essex Street. That is where they want the services, and we want that too. If we said something as like inside of their geographic boundary, I don't want us to do that. I just don't want us to support an expansion of the bid catchment area.
We're not.
Well, we're
right.
not.
I'm in agreement with you, David, and I'm in agreement with you, David, and I think that's Richard's point as well. So how do we assure that we're not doing that in this resolution?
Do we have any language whatsoever about the larger proposal, the other proposal to expand the bid catchment? I don't think we mentioned that at all. Can we highlight it if it's in there? Because that we should be talking about the precise language.
There is no proposal to do that.
There was a discussion earlier about it. If it's a totally separate thing, then if we have no words in here about a potential expansion, that's great. But there was some wishy-washy debate earlier, which I totally didn't understand why it was happening, about, well, is it good enough that we've implied that we support that further expansion? That's where things got, I mean, that's what triggered Richard and I. I don't think it's in there.
I think Tim needs to clarify.
Well, we need to clarify what's the language in our document. Oh, I see what you're saying. Tim needs to clarify their intent, perhaps. But we need to know what's in our document.
It's not in our like, there's nothing about geographic boundaries in our document.
So then there was never an implicit support for it, although it was said that there was.
No.
Okay, well, there is not. Thank you.
Okay, Michelle, go ahead.
I just wanted to just, I guess, to put some clarifying language around this. In the first whereas, hold on, I just drafted it. Just add a little bit about the service delivery area that they're already using. So, and we could ask Tim for the map. Whereas the need for additional services to mitigate neighborhood quality of life, to improve neighborhood quality of life and mitigate issues caused by local economic activity is apparent in the Lower East Side, specifically in the Lower East Side Partnership's current service delivery area map attached. Tim, could you send a map like from the?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do a map. Just to clarify, the service delivery area that we currently have is expanded beyond our boundaries and includes areas that would, to provide additional services, need to be included in a future expansion, right? But which is a completely separate process, but right. So I think just for the clarity that I think some folks mentioned, this helps guide where we should take that process and in a focused manner, I think is appropriate to the areas where we already deliver services outside of assessment funds, right? That are grant funded or otherwise funded, where we already have operations.
Thanks, Tim. Is there a
Thank you
second?
for your comment, Tim, but that may clarify it for the bid, but I don't think that it clarifies it for the community board.
Can we talk about Michelle's amendment?
Sure.
Because I second that. Yeah,
Okay. There's a second, now we can debate it.
I think that I think that clarifies that the specific area that we're talking about, we're not asking for an expansion in this resolution, but we are asking that they expand services, or that the area that they're talking about is areas that they're already providing services,
Right.
but they don't have consistent funding to do so. And I think that's clarified in Michelle's addition.
My understanding is that they do not provide services north of Delancey Street. So what is that saying?
Yes,
No, that's their main area is north of Delancey Street.
yeah, they supply.
I'm sorry, north of Houston Street.
They're not.
Yeah, we're
going
not talking about north of Houston Street.
Well, the wording leaves that very nebulous in this.
Well, not if you say to the areas that they're currently providing services. And then Tim can add a map to the areas that they're currently providing services. The bids never provided services north of Houston.
Correct.
But Paul, if I might, Richard, just to clarify on your question, I think that there was some confusion about a request for services in the East Village, and just from a historical perspective, there was a pilot program that SBS funded. At no time have we or are we suggesting or entertaining an expansion of services to the East Village? And I think, as Michelle said, that clarity to our existing service area, which is all south of Houston, right? And so the only concern I see with, if you limited to our current geographic boundaries, is that you would be excluding services delivered on the Ludlow corridor, which is kind of the prime counterpart to Orchard with respect to nightlife mitigation needs.
So I actually think Michelle's change up to that whereas clarifies everything, at least on this. So any other debate? Megan, can you write it up on there just so we can see what it looks like? I think for that first whereas. Okay, that changed. All right. Okay, we're gonna do the same thing we did before. We're gonna take a vote on this, so everyone can raise their Zoom hands if they approve of it. Seven. Okay. 1, 2, 3. That's 9. That's 9.
remember
That's 10. I got you. 10.
Okay,
We're good. It's in. All right. Everyone put their hands down nice and slowly. All right. Any other amendments? Changes we'd like to make? Oh, Michelle, one more.
I'm calling the question.
Oh, okay. So we gotta call the question. So let's put this bad boy to a vote.
I think you
I
can ask
think-
if there's any objections to going to. the-
My apologies. I was just.
You can
Are
also
there
take,
any objections to moving this to a vote? I think we've beaten this up pretty well so far. Are there any objections to keep to keep debate going? I don't hear anything. Okay, let's move this to a vote. So what we'll do is I'll do a roll call vote for transportation, and then Anisha, you can do it for economic development. So Paul Rangel, yes. Michelle Coopersmith.
Yes.
Wendy Lee is absent. I think Lee Berman left already? He's absent. David Crane.
yes.
Keniel Hernandez.
Yes.
Rick Ramos.
Yes.
Thank you. That's for transportation.
For economic development, Anisha Stephen, yes. Megan Joy,
Yes.
Alistair is absent. Andrea is absent. Herman Hewitt,
yes.
David Louie,
Yes.
Richard Robiak,
No.
Rodney Washington,
Yes.
Andrew Comey.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think the resolution passes. All right. So for transportation, we're done. Thank you for coming on tonight. And I hand everything back over to Anisha for her committee, and have a good rest of the meeting. Love what you've done with the place. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
So for economic development, we have like 2 more things to talk about, I think, pretty quickly. We have, let's see, district needs approval and expense priorities. So the district needs, we actually finalized in July. We just need to vote on it. Susan, is that right?
That's correct. We wanted to do all the district needs and priority vote together.
Richard, you have your hand up.
Motion to approve the district needs item on the agenda.
Do I have a second?
A second.
We can do a roll call for, I guess, for this one, and then we would have to do another one for the expense, but that's fine. So just let me quickly do that. So again, this is to approve the district needs. Anisha Stephen, yes. Megan Joy,
Yes.
Herman Hewitt,
Yes.
David Louie,
Yes.
Richard Robiak,
Yes.
Rodney Washington,
Yes.
Andrew Comey.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that passed. Yay. And then let's talk about the budget priority. So and I apologize, I've been out of town for a couple of weeks, so I'm not as up to speed on this, but we looked at what we had submitted last year, and I think that's what was emailed around. It was around the,
No,
oh no,
no, I emailed this afternoon. You should have
Yeah, I'll
got,
pull it up. Yeah, give me one
okay.
sec.
yeah, late this afternoon, because we had conversations with David Garza about workforce development needs.
Okay, so let's pull that up. Last year, our big one was the commercial lease assistance program, which has been like funded for many years actually by SBS.
Right.
So that no longer sort of needs advocacy from us, but there are some workforce programs that we've heard that could use our support.
Yeah, and one is the same as last year and two are new ones.
Okay.
They're not new programs, but they're new, they're programs that have been basically up till now funded by city council, and it's a request to expand and baseline them.
Can you see that now?
Yep.
Yes. And Richard, you have your hand up.
Sorry to do this to you. I was going to make a motion to approve the economic development budget priorities.
Do we,
You don't even
So-
know what they are yet.
do we, I think we rank that, like we put them in the order we like, right?
Yes, you have to rank them, and the first one has a number because it's left over from last year, and the other two, which you can get rid of that number. So yes, you would have to rank them.
So the programs are the Jobs Plus program that provides NYCHA residents assessment, job readiness training, job search assistance, etc. So this is one that we've advocated for before. These two new programs, or these two other programs, are Jobs to Build On. This program offers low-income non-NYCHA residents basically very similar services, and it's funded by City Council, but should be sort of baselined by HRA. And then the other is the Bridge Training Program, which is funded by Council, and it's a pre-apprenticeship program that connects the specific skills needed to succeed in advanced tech training. And the city has not fully funded this. This is, I guess, pretty connected to, you know, our advocacy and work around the Tech Training Center. So does anybody have any comments on ranking these differently than how they are currently placed in order?
Under the circumstances, I'd probably want to just leave them the way they are.
I agree.
I
I
agree.
like them where they are.
Richard, maybe you'd like to make your motion.
Yes, motion to approve the budget items as presented.
Second,
Wonderful. Let me just do, I guess, the roll call again. Anisha Stephen, yes. Megan Joy. Megan.
Yes.
Herman Hewitt,
yes.
David Louie,
Yes.
Richard Ropiak,
Yes.
Rodney Washington,
Yes.
and Andrew Comey.
Yes.
Cool. So that passes also. The very last thing on the agenda was just an update from Arts and Culture. They are planning a town hall like they have one every year. They're planning and working towards it being at the beginning of December. And they are sort of focusing on two buckets of issues. One is around individual artists, around like sector recovery programs related to like individual artists' work. And then the second is for the cultural institutions. So I think we can share more info. Andre wasn't here tonight, but she can share more information at our next meeting, but that's what they're working on.
The date is set. I don't remember what it is, but it's the first week of December and it's been confirmed.
Great. So I can just share more information over email if anybody wants to know more about it. So with that,
Anisha, could you, number 3, the baseline and the program, could you just correct those?
oh, sure. Megan, could you?
Thanks.
Is program spelled wrong?
Yeah.
How do you spell program? Program,
It's-
right?
It's supposed to be a glitch. It's spelled correctly now.
It's spelled
Okay.
correct.
I'm like, right.
So there aren't any more agenda items. I also just wanted to thank everybody for their patience over the past few months with figuring out how to meet in person, then meet virtually, and all of those things. And I know we haven't met in a while, but now that we are at least back to meeting virtually, hopefully we can get back to sort of regular meetings. And with that, I'm unless there are any other questions or comments about anything.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes, thank you so much, Richard.
Sorry.
It's all right.
It's tradition.
Tradition. I can hear Susan steaming now.
I just got back from like a 2.5 week safari, so I'm like really tired. I got back in this morning, so appreciate your patience with all of me as well.
Welcome back.
Have a good night, everybody. I'll see you next
Okay.
month. Board.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Need to borrow your phone charger.